Hey everyone, it's Karen, and I'm here for day 2 of the 100-day, my 100-day project, where I'm going to be working through my junk journal for the next 100 days. So we're at day number 2, so we're making a slow start. So I'll color in that spot once we're done. So I was going to find a page to use, and what I want to journal about, and I apologize, and these pictures did not come out very well. I'm using one of those little HP sprockets, and I haven't used it for some time, so they came out really bad. I'm just going to trim off the excess. And then I want to talk about, and what I want to journal about for today's entry is what I made for supper yesterday. So, part of supper worked out really well, part of supper not so much. Oh well. So I made this soup. This is smoky chowder, I think is what it's called. It's a recipe I got from somebody at a church that we went to some time back, and they had brought this with them, and I just thought it was absolutely amazing. So I got the recipe, and I've made it quite a few times over the past few years. It never fails. It's always so delicious. It's always so good. And it's one of the easiest things ever to make. It's the laziest thing ever to make. To make a double batch, which I always make, which feeds the two of us for several days. I use 2 cans of diced potatoes, 2 cans of cream corn, and 2 cans of regular corn. And the corn and potatoes, drain them for the most part. It doesn't have to be super well drained, but I do tend to drain some of the fluid off. Then you also use a garlic quail. So either the garlic kielbasa or whatever, and you cut that up into pieces, toss that in the pot, and then for a double batch, you use 3 cups of either milk or half and half, depending on how thick you want the soup to be. You put that all in the pot, you heat it up. Once it's warm, then you add in a packet of, I've never used specific measurements, I use about 2 handfuls of grated cheddar cheese. Now, this recipe normally calls for smoked cheddar. I can never find smoked cheddar, so I have a jar of liquid smoke, and I give it a generous few shots of liquid smoke to give it the smoky flavor. Once it's heated up, you add in the shredded cheese, mix it up, eat it, and oh my goodness, it is so delicious. Then the other thing I wanted to make was a loaf of bread. And I thought, well, I'm going to use I have a bread making machine that I have not used in, I'm not even sure how many years it's been. I know I have not used it since we moved into this apartment, and we've been here for 2.5 years. I know I also have not used it at the apartment we were in before we moved here, which was another 5 years. So we're up to 7.5 years since I've used it, minimum. And then I'm not sure before that, when I'd last used it. So we used to use the bread machine a lot. I have not used it in recent years. I have not used it much at all. And what I found was when I used this for the first time, when I used it the other day, just checking to make sure I'm still mostly in frame. So I haven't used it in some time, and I was assuming it was still going to work the way it's supposed to. Where's my, there it is. Sorry, I was looking for my tape. So anyway, I got the ingredients for it. I didn't have it calls for, the recipe calls for using the fast-acting yeast. Well, with everything going on with the quarantines and all of that right now, a lot of things are difficult to find a lot of the ingredients that I needed for this, and quick yeast was one of the things I couldn't find. So I just had the regular yeast, which I just used as is. So part of the problem might have been because I used the wrong kind of yeast, quite possibly. The second problem I ran into with making this poor loaf of bread was that I plugged it in, started it up, it worked fine. I went off to the other room, left it to do its thing. My husband came through a little while later and he says, "Aren't you making bread?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he commented, "Well, it's not doing anything." So went and checked, and sure enough, it had popped the breaker. So I thought, oh boy. So we switched it to another outlet in the kitchen, fired it up, it was working, so I wandered away from it again. My husband comes back, he says, "It did it again." I'm like, oh my goodness, you're kidding me. So it kept popping the breaker. So I went and we put it on, oops, that didn't work out very well. We put it on a TV table in the dining room because the plug-in doesn't reach from the plug-in doesn't reach to the dining room table. Anyway, so we put it on a TV table in the dining room and let it keep going. So I think what ended up happening was that it spent too much time not working properly, and the bread came out, it did finish the loaf of bread. It did come out incredibly dense. It didn't rise properly. That might be the fault of the yeast. It might be the fault of it just didn't have the opportunity to cycle through as best it could. So that could have been the problem. So anyways, this poor loaf of bread was very short and incredibly dense. The bread was so dense. The edges of the bread, the crusts were really hard. It was a sad little loaf of bread. We're stubborn, so we are going to eat the whole thing. We're going to finish this loaf of bread. We will eat the whole thing, but oh boy, it was not a pretty loaf of bread. It just did not turn out. So I'm just hoping that I'll make another loaf probably tomorrow or the next day. And I'm just hoping that the next one will start out using a socket where it's going to work properly. But I'm hoping it turns out better tomorrow or the next time I make a loaf. So anyways, that was the adventure with making my dinner, or our dinner, the other night. So I just wanted to document a little bit about that. And I can't spell. I'm not even sure if I'm spelling. That word does not look right. Is that how you spell delicious? Oh, good grief. I should quit while I'm ahead. I went the wrong way. It's the 8th. So there we go. I have my, my little entry for day 2 of the 100-day project or 100-day junk journaling challenge. And this is for Wednesday, April the 8th, 2020. So it's for day 2. And I'm just documenting the supper that I cooked for the hubby and I on Tuesday the 7th of April. Alrighty, thank you so much for watching. Take care, everyone, and I will see you tomorrow for another video. Bye now.